The sound of a pile driver signals progress in the construction of the new Winona Bridge. Project manager Terry Ward said right now the race is on to beat Old Man Winter and stay ahead of spring flooding.
Well, our goal, again, starting out on the project is to try and get our river foundations up out of the ground before springtime freezing and flooding and all of that. So basically we've built our accesses on both sides of the river, which is fantastic. The accesses are pretty well done. Right now we're focusing our efforts on what we call Pier 10 and Pier 11. Pier 10 is on the closest to the levee, and Pier 11 is the one out in the middle of the river. From a schedule perspective, Pier 11 is a critical one because we can't get out there during the winter time when the ice freezes over on the river. So basically on Pier 11, what we've done is we've got our cofferdam built, or our temporary shell for going down into the bottom of the river. We've excavated down to the bottom of our seal elevation, so we've taken quite a bit of material out. You can see in the background we've started driving our 42-inch shell piling on Pier 11, and then once we get our piling driven down, we'll clean out around them, and then we'll pour our big thick concrete seal, about a 12.5-foot thick slab of concrete, and then we'll dewater. So that big thick slab of concrete handles all the hydrostatic pressure from dewatering. That's why we need that that thick slab. On Pier 10, we've driven our cofferdam sheeting as well. We're starting to put our internal bracing, or what we call our ring beams, together. We'll get those installed, we'll excavate, and then we'll start driving piling maybe as soon as a week after next. We'll go through that same process of putting our seal there. Over on Pier 13, which is on Latch Island side, we've driven one what we call production pile, or permanent pile, and then we were slated on Tuesday to do our explosion test, or our statnamic test. We had a few little hiccups with that with our strain gauges, but that's one of our next things as well, is to do our statnamic test. The statnamic test is really proving out, or proofing out, the actual loading capacity of the piling, making sure that we're getting at least the design assumptions for loading on the piling. So it's a real big, heavy structure. We actually set off an explosion that lifts a big device and puts a load on the pile. So we measure the load from the explosion that we put on the pile, and then we measure any displacement on the pile. Using formulas, we can proof out that we're getting enough capacity out of that pile, and then we use that to make sure that all the other pile, again, we're meeting our design intent in terms of capacity. The other thing we do on our statnamic test now is we put strain gauges on the piling so that we can test the loading on the piling all the way down.
Pilings that will bear the weight of the new bridge are currently being driven into the river bottom. Ward explained the pilings will be driven over 100 feet below the river's surface.
The piling right now, we're estimating the length of the piling at final length to be in the neighborhood of 118 to 120 feet. So if you look at the normal river elevation today, it's about, in our world, it's about elevation 645. The bedrock foundation down below is about elevation 510. So that means it's about 135 feet from river elevation to what we call top of bedrock. So that's what we're working with, Dave, in terms of the geological conditions out there.
A lot of the work currently being done is by the welders. Anywhere from 6 to 10 welders are working on the site each day to build framing for the cofferdams.
Right now, today as we look at the job, we're really at the mercy of the welders. There's a lot of welding on, from ring beams to welding pieces of piling together. So right now the scheduling, and we factored this in, is having enough qualified and certified welders here. Once we get the piling driven down, get our seal poured, then we'll bring in iron workers and we'll start to form the rebar cages and put the rebar together. You'll see more workers when we get the iron workers here, but what I'm trying to get at is kind of the critical work, or the critical craft, does change when you get into certain aspects of work.
Ward explained that much of what you see now in the river will be removed once concrete is poured.
Those piling will be driven down, we'll cut them off, they'll become part of our footing, or our foundation, so they won't be seen when it's all said and done. Eventually the sheeting and the square cofferdam box will come out when we're all done. But again, what we want to try and prevent is with that cofferdam there, having flooding in the spring, getting down in there and really slowing us down. Because we do need to have a lot of workers down there tying steel, rebar, pouring concrete so we can get up and out of the river bottom.
As construction enters its 5th month, Ward said everything remains on schedule.
We're on schedule, we're doing well. As we get up and out of the river again, they'll start to maybe see even a little bit more activity, but so far things are going well on the project. We've had a few little hiccups like you can expect on a construction job. We'll be here for the most part through this winter and working pretty hard and diligently to again try and stay out of harm's way for flooding in the spring.
You are invited to follow construction progress on the Minnesota Department of Transportation website, and you can receive regular updates by liking the Winona Bridge project at facebook.com/WinonaBridge.